Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Regenerative Business Podcast. I am here with our special guest, professional astrologer Heather Eland from Astrology with Heather from the Cosmic Academy of Astrology. I'm going to let Heather introduce herself because she wouldn't give me a bio.
That's not entirely true, but
No, it's not true. It's not true.
fair enough. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. And like Sam just said, I'm a professional astrologer. I've been practicing astrology, studying astrology, and teaching astrology for roughly 13 years now. I founded the Cosmic Academy of Astrology and the Cosmic Wellness Academy. And my background is actually in clinical psychology. So I incorporate a lot of that into the work that I do as an astrologer. And if you want to find me, you can find me on YouTube, Astrology with Heather.
Amazing. So I had a reading with Heather, I don't know, was it like a month ago? What is time? A few weeks ago, let's say. And we just kind of were looking at a bunch of different things. And she gave me such profound insight on like straight up business structure of what my astrology chart says about business structure. And we're going to talk about that on a separate episode because why I wanted to bring Heather on today was really because of you guys. You always tell me, like, okay, what do I look at in astrology if I'm trying to plan some specific launch date or business thing or put something out in the world? What should I look at with astrology if I'm not an astrologer? Like, maybe I think astrology is cool, but electional astrology, which is, I think, the dumbest name. Like, why do we keep calling it electional astrology? Because we just think it's an election.
That is like the biggest thing. When I say that, people think I'm talking about like predicting the elections, like the
Yeah.
presidential elections. But that's actually just what it's been called throughout history for like hundreds of years. So we stick with that traditional name. But it's basically just the art of selecting the best timing to optimize your chances of success for
Hmm.
anything you wish to accomplish, for anything you wish to launch or to achieve. And so yeah, it's pretty relevant to business because you can use this type of timing to enhance success for your business for the lifetime of your business by choosing the exact perfect birth chart for your business, for your end goals, and one that aligns not just with that, but with you and your own personal astrology. And you can do that with all of your different launches for different courses, different products, podcasts, whatever. And I've seen this work time and time again. And when you don't choose the right electional astrology or just wing it, it doesn't mean that you can't be successful, but there are complications that will come up that you can kind of predict in that by looking at the timing of that as well. So we'll get into all of that.
So I'm understanding it right. We're essentially choosing a birth chart for this project or this thing to go out in the world. And it's like, oh, if I could choose anything and all these perfect little pieces together, this perfect birth chart, or like quote unquote perfect, best birth chart possible in our ideal timing. And then we are kind of looking at like the synastry, the compatibility between your chart and the project's chart.
Yes, so that would be a big component of it as well. You don't want the electional chart, the birth chart of your thing to cause undue stress or challenges for you personally, right? So you want to make sure that these things are integrated.
Hmm. That's funny. I've never thought of it that way because we all know that you like meet a person and they're a great person, you can tell, but there's just like something you just don't like them. It's like you like either can't carry a conversation or like the humor isn't there. There's like some butting heads in some way. So it's kind of how do we actually keep our own astrology in mind in relationship to the project. So it's not just like it doesn't just like look good from afar, but it actually interacts with us well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you'll watch these more general astrology forecasts, like the ones that I do,
Mhm.
and it might say, like, oh, this is a really great time for all sorts of things. Like in the general astrology, the general themes might portray that. However, for each individual person, we have individual birth charts, and it's very complicated and nuanced the way that the astrology interacts with your birth chart. And
Mhm.
so, what works really well for me might not work well for you at all, and vice versa. So you need to keep that in mind. And when you're listening to the more general stuff, yes, that can be helpful. It is a good starting point, but it's not going to give you the precision of knowing, like, is this truly right for me personally? So that's another thing to keep in mind too. It's not just what's going on out there because it could all be perfect and beautiful, although it's usually not. But when it is, it doesn't mean that it's hitting you in the same way.
Mhm. Yeah. So good. So I really wanted to come at this mainly from a more beginner level, like even for people who are interested in astrology and they know their big three and they listen to forecasts and stuff. Most people don't know how to predict, and especially because you need a certain foundation, which I know you're excellent at giving people foundations, but for the purposes of today, what are the things that we can be thinking about for online program launches, for putting new projects out into the world, for those of us who don't have these very deep foundations in astrology?
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I don't say that first part about like the nuances and the complexity to scare people. I just want everyone to know that it's more than just like, the sun is in this sign and Mercury
Yeah.
is in retrograde. Like it is more complicated than that, but there are things that you can start doing at a very basic level just by looking at the moon that can make such a difference. Like
Mm.
I would love if every single person listening to this would just choose a month or just start right now and for 30 days just launch their things in time with the moon. It could be even just like important meetings, putting out a new like email or a new blog post or a new podcast episode, just looking at just subtly aligning it with what the moon is doing and just see how that changes your month and see how that changes your results because chances are it's going to move things in a positive direction.
And by that you mean like put something out on the new moon?
No. So that's where we get
Yeah.
into That's where I get into the actual like nitty gritty of this. So when you're looking at the moon, you're looking at four different things actually. You're looking at the phase of the moon and that timing. That's actually not as important as a lot of people think it is. So when people are new to timing things with astrology, they're only looking at usually the phases of the moon and they put that as like the top
And
importance.
and by that mean we mean like is it new? Is it waxing? Is it waning? Is it full? Like
Yes.
that. Hmm.
Is it new? Is it waxing? Is it waning? Is it full? And so the kind of more common understanding is that when the moon is waxing, that's when you put things out that you want to grow. When the moon is waning, that's when you put things out that you want to like decrease or wrap up or end. The full moon is a time of a lot of energy and a lot of power. And the new moon is a time where there's not as much energy behind manifestation. And the reason for this actually is because the moon is technically what's called combust. It's being burned by the rays of the sun. It's dark. There's not a lot of energy emanating from it. And so when the moon is in this state, it doesn't have the ability to manifest things in physical reality. The moon in traditional astrology, believe it or not, is actually a relay station for the energies of the other planets in the solar system.
What do
So
you mean
it
by
takes the
that?
energy.
Tell me more.
I'm about to explain that. I know that sounds weird, but so basically, it takes the energies and the significations of all the other planets and it transmits them down to planet Earth into physical form, into our reality. And so, the traditional understanding of the moon is that that's part of its job. And so, when the moon is dark and when it's combust, when it's burned by the rays of the sun, it can't take things and physically manifest them in the same way. And so this is a period of internalization. This is a period of reflection. This is a period of reflecting on what has worked or not worked in the previous lunar cycle and thinking about what you want to start creating moving forward, but not actually starting it because that energy is just not there. And that is the most important thing to consider when it comes to moon phase. The other stuff is great to consider if you have the luxury of doing it or if you're just only looking at the moon. So if you're wanting to play with that and use that as a starting point, like I'm putting things out that I want to grow when it's waxing, I'm putting things out that I want to decrease or release, like I'm paying off a debt or something like that when it's decreasing, that's great. But there are other things we have to consider too.
And you've already said it's like the least important one. So moving on.
Yes. But it's the easiest, right? It's the easiest. It's the lowest hanging fruit. Everybody can do it. You can just look at the sky. You don't even have to have like a lunar calendar. But for those who want to go a little bit deeper, there are very like inexpensive lunar calendars that have the astrological signs and the void of course moon periods, which we'll talk about, and the aspects between the moon and other planets that you can get from basically anywhere. Like go on Amazon, search it. You want one that's just going to have like all of the lunar phases, the lunar transits. That's basically all you need. So from there, if you have that calendar, what you're looking for is, well, a couple of different things. You're looking at the moon being in a certain sign but not being void of course. So that's step one. It will say on the calendar when it's void of course, it'll say VOC. What
Mhm.
void of course means is that the moon is transiting a certain sign, but it's past the point of making any aspects with any of the other planets in the solar system while it's in that sign. So it's basically the time between the last aspect it makes in that sign until it moves into the following sign.
So it's
So
like
for
kind of like when it's a new moon, it's like not actually projecting out the energy when it's void of course. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
precisely. So it's there's not a lot of energy behind it again. So you don't want to use those periods. And it's said that during these void of course moon periods, that things just tend to not take hold, they tend to fizzle out, they tend to not be as important as you think they are. And so
Mhm.
that can be good and bad. So imagine that you have like a meeting that happens during a void of course moon and it goes horrible. And you're like, "Oh God, this is going to ruin my whole career." Well, you can like kind of sit knowing that it's probably not like it's not going to amount to what you think it's going to amount to. And that's the basic signification of the void of course moon. On the other hand, if you like launch something that you're really excited about and you put it out during that void of course moon, it's less likely to actually turn into something. So you want to keep that in mind.
So what before you go deeper into this, do you have favorite journals or digital calendars that you use for this sort of thing?
Yes, my favorite is the Honeycomb Almanac, but that is very personalized. There's a lot of information in there. So if you want all the things, like all of your personal transits, all of, the moon phases, all of the mundane transits, there's like keys and glossaries and all sorts of stuff. You can get that. It's not super expensive. It's at honeycomb.co. Maybe you can link that. And then the Magic of Eye calendar, that has more just general transits, and that I think is better for beginners especially.
Mhm. And then I really like Wicked Veracity's digital calendar. My big thing is I have all these journals that I never ever use. And so I really like I use a digital calendar every single day. So I think the Magic of I now has a digital calendar too. It was just I'm friends with Robin who does Wicked Veracity and she was the first one I ever found. So if anyone's like me and they love the idea of physical planners but don't actually use them, then there are
Mhm.
digital ones available.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different like astrology software that you can connect to your like iCalendar or Google Calendar.
Mhm.
I use Astro Gold, which is a professional software that most people are probably not going to want to invest in. I think it's about $350, but there's a button you click and it just puts it into your calendar, which I think is
Oh.
magical.
Uh-huh.
So there are other options available too, like if you are somebody who wants to go deeper into astrology.
Mhm. And then okay, so I'm guessing you said you want it when we talked about phases, then we went
Yes.
into the next thing to focus on is really it not being void of course.
Yes.
And then I'm assuming the next one is what sign is the moon in?
That's going to be important, but not as important as that'll be kind of next. So, like, the next
Okay.
thing you want to look at, or maybe we could go in order of like
Oh
what's the
no,
most.
you lead the way.
Well, since we're talking about aspects, the next kind of logical thing to talk about is what you want to look at when you have your lunar calendar is when the moon is transiting any sign and you are going to initiate something while it's in that sign. What is the last aspect the moon is making with another planet before it exits that sign? And so by aspect, I mean like the moon is making different angles with the different planets in the sky, and these angles represent different things.
Mhm.
And so there are negative aspects that are considered challenging. Those are primarily squares that can sometimes include oppositions and conjunctions. There's a little bit of like nuance there. But the main thing you want to look for is the positive aspects. You want the moon to be making a positive aspect, a trine or a sextile. So this is going to be a 120 degree aspect with the trine. That's the best one. So if you see a little triangle in your calendar, then that means that that is a positive aspect. You want that to be the last one it makes it before it goes void, of course. The second one you can look for that's second best is going to be called a sextile, and that's going to be a little asterisk. So that's a 60-degree aspect between two planets.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my I guess I need to put this on YouTube so that I fully understand what we're talking about. So this is like the digital calendar.
So that, yeah, those are the lunar aspects. So if you're looking at, let's say, Monday, the 13th of January, which has already passed, we have an aspect here where the moon is conjunct Mars.
And
And
that's the conjunct symbol.
yeah, that's the
Uh-huh.
conjunct symbol. But then we have right here after that the moon. Okay, so that's actually a trine, but it's a trine with not a planet, but an asteroid. So that doesn't count.
Mhm.
So your software is a little wonky. Let's look at a different example.
Yeah, wait, wait. Tell me what I should look at just so we can like get some visual.
So you want to be looking at aspects between the moon and actual planets. So the planets are
So like
the
this one is would be that.
Yes, that
That's
is going to
sextile?
be sextile
Yeah.
Jupiter. So moon sextile Jupiter, any little asterisk is a good one. So if that were the last aspect the moon was making before it moves into the next sign, that is a very good thing because Jupiter is the great benefic planet. It instills optimism and opportunity. It grows and expands things. It is the best of the best. So if the moon is making a trine or a sextile with Jupiter as its
We're
last
looking for those
aspect,
little triangles, or we're looking at
yes.
the little asterisks. And then is it only with the with like Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus that we're mainly paying attention to, or just any planet?
Any planet, and that includes the modern outer planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And even, Mars or Saturn, if it's a positive aspect, that can be a very good thing. So
What is this symbol? I don't know this symbol.
that symbol is an opposition. So an
Oh, so
opposition is very
bad.
literally what it sounds like. The planets are opposite each other. An opposition is only going to be good as a last aspect if it's with Venus, which is what you just showed, or if it's with Jupiter. So
Okay.
Venus
Oh,
and
oh.
Jupiter are the two benefic planets.
So it's fine if the moon is opposed to Venus or Jupiter, that's
Yes.
okay too, but not any of the other planets.
Well, for the sake of keeping it simple, we'll say no. Like
Okay, great.
playing it safe, just Jupiter and Venus, and conjunctions between Jupiter and Venus too, which would be a circle with a little tiny line.
Okay, everyone, you just need to go to YouTube apparently and watch this because I'm just looking at symbols on my digital calendar with Heather, and it's not going to make any sense if you're listening to the podcast. But that is
Well, so
it's like
click on that one right there. So go down a little
this
bit.
one,
So on
this
Monday,
one.
January 20th,
Yeah.
that purple right there, that's with the brown. So that's the last aspect the moon is making before it goes void of course. That's always going to be with that void of course moon. The void of course moon starts exactly when that aspect ends.
So
And so this
moon
is going to be
square Mars, that's bad, right?
that is really bad because Mars and Saturn are the two malefic planets. And so if you have squares to Mars or Saturn, that's the worst time to initiate something.
But then this, oh, that's not a planet. Wait, okay,
Oh,
let's try.
that's Neptune. So yeah, that is a
What is it?
planet.
It is a planet. Okay. So moon, trine, Neptune, that would be good because we have
Yes.
trine.
And
Okay.
that's on the 23rd. So that's so the reason for this is the last aspect the moon makes before it leaves the sign it's in indicates the outcome of the thing that you initiated. And this works like almost every single time, very spot on. So you want the outcome of the thing that you initiated to be positive. That is probably going to be your primary goal with anything that you're initiating.
Okay,
So this is super important.
clarification. So if, okay, let's say I'm like, oh, I really want this. Let's say this one is the best. I'm sure that we could have found better things, but just for
Mhm.
the sake of, let's say this moon trine Neptune on January 23rd, like this is the best thing ever. Would I be launching before or after this?
Before.
Before. So like right before or at the moment?
Anytime while
Anytime
the
before?
moon is in the sign that it's in. So that the moon
Okay.
is in what, Scorpio at that time, it looks like? Yeah. So anytime the moon is in Scorpio, that entire like 2.5 day period,
Hmm.
the outcome is that moon trine Jupiter.
Hmm.
So that the outcome is like greater compassion, greater connection, greater creativity, all of these really Neptunian beautiful things. So regardless of when you initiate during that period, the outcome is the same.
Hmm. Okay, and maybe we should say the very, very basic thing of the moon changes signs roughly every 2.5 days. And so
Mhm.
like the void, of course, is when it's moving signs. So
It's right before it moves signs. Sometimes it'll last a little bit longer, and sometimes it'll be just for a few minutes. So, starting with paying attention to that can actually do a lot of good.
and so from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm paying this thing right here, the trining or the sextiling of planets is more important than the sign that the moon is in before or after. This thing is the most important in this
Correct.
case. Okay, great. And then let's clarify when we're talking about launching. Is this like, okay, I'm about to announce that I'm going to do a webinar, and then later on,
Mhm.
after the webinar happens, I am going to start talking about my online course. Is my like the start, is the initiation of my launch when I'm announcing the webinar, or is the initiation of the launch when I'm announcing the course?
So that depends. Is it a live course where there's an actual start date, or is it something that's pre-recorded?
Let's say both scenarios.
So if you're doing something that's live, what I found, I used to think it was like when you started the process of marketing the course, so you started promoting it. So the onset of the launch.
Mhm.
That's important, but I have come to realize that that's secondary. So basically, what you want to find is the exact perfect time for the thing to start, because that is the birth of the thing.
Like the
And this,
live call kind of thing, or when the Facebook group opens?
when the Facebook group opens, when the first like day of your course begins, when you unlock the course for everyone, like whatever that is, whatever that starting point is. So if it's a live course, it's like when the first lesson is released.
Okay, that's
Um,
interesting because it's like that's when it's like the baby is actually born versus announcing
yes.
the pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I, for so long, did it the other way. And it worked well enough because, like, announcing it is still important. You want that to go well. You want people to be like, yeah, I'm super excited about, that thing that you're giving birth to, be it, a child or a course. But you also want the actual course to go well and the energy that you of the timing that you choose for that initiation point for the course, that feeds into the launch very much so. So it's already there. Even if it hasn't happened yet, that energy of that timing that you have chosen very intentionally is already present and it really impacts how the launch goes.
Mhm.
So that's going to be your starting point. And then from there, you'll look at like secondary timing of announcing it or whatever phase of the launch that you're in. You still want that to be as good as it can be, but it's not as important.
So what about if it's an evergreen course, there's no or like what evergreen whatever, so there's no live element of it and they get it as soon as they buy it.
So in that case, if you're doing like a live webinar or some sort of live event that is promoting the course, that's what you would be wanting to do. So you would choose that time. So whatever you can choose that's going to be the closest to like the birthing of that course, that's what you're going to want to look at. So I would choose like I'm doing the live webinar on this day and this is the energy that's going to be behind it and that's going to be, opening up for people to actually be able to be in the course or to more people to be in the course.
Oh, okay. So now, just from knowing the back end of your business, you have Cosmic Academy of Astrology, which is open all the time.
Yes.
When you are planning out your like your live workshops that you're doing as promotional things, the most important element for you is when that actual live workshop is.
Yes. So,
Mhm.
for example, we just saw on the 23rd of January, the last aspect the moon's making before it switches signs is a trine to Neptune. And the moon is in Scorpio, technically at its fall, but for me, that's good. And I'm doing my workshop, The Attuned Astrologer. Anyone who wants to sign up, that's when
This
it's
is coming
happening.
out later.
I know.
Wait, okay, this is going to come out in February. What's happening in February that we're
Oh,
promoting?
my relationships and synastry training.
Oh, perfect.
Either way though, so I that time that you just showed, like I chose that time very intentionally because of that, because that is going to be the birth of essentially this version of the Cosmic Academy of Astrology, this new cohort, like all these people coming in, that type of thing.
So now I'm like looking at my calendar being because I'm releasing a pre-recorded workshop tomorrow and I'm like, wait, what does the astrology say about this? Oh no, why didn't we record this sooner?
Well, that's where we get into like the inception chart versus the electional chart. And even if you've chosen it, but you haven't chosen it intentionally for the astrology, it's still an inception chart. And what an inception chart is basically the birth of the thing that you didn't choose. And sometimes we don't have the ability to choose, like when a really important moment happens, but we can still get really important information from that chart of that thing. And so one of the things that you can do is kind of look at that for additional insight and information into the challenges that might come up, what the likely outcomes are, and how to work with the energy better.
Hmm. Okay. Tell me more.
Do you want me to keep going with the moon, or are we going to
Oh
talk
yeah,
more?
let's circle back to that because before we hit record, everyone, we were talking about various things we wanted to cover and definitely wanted to talk about the what if the astrology is bad for months and then also what if we can't control. But let's keep going with our current plan.
Yeah.
Like my squirrel brain is getting distracted by like real world scenarios.
Well, so we were talking about the last aspect the moon makes. Another thing that you would want to be looking at that's not as important but is still important are the aspects, all of the aspects the moon is making while it's transiting that sign. Are there more squares? So, like, literally, it looks like a square on the calendar. Are there more little triangles and asterisks? So, that's going to really talk about the journey getting there to the outcome. So the last aspect is the outcome. All of the other aspects the moon makes while it's transiting that sign, that's the journey. And so if you're seeing that at some point in this journey, there is a square, and maybe it's just Saturn or Mars, the malefic planets, you want to time your launch or your meeting or whatever it is slightly after that aspect has come exact. Because when you time it after the aspect, it represents moving away from something that was challenging and into something else. Versus if you time it where it's right before that square, that indicates an obstacle that you are still going to have to overcome in order to get to that outcome.
And when you say come exact, you mean happens, right?
When it happens, yes, when it happens.
Okay, now we're gonna go back to my little calendar because I feel like this is everyone go to YouTube. I never do like video versions of these, but I it has to happen. So
Let's
like
go to
okay.
let's go to January 17th
Okay, let's go to January
since
17th.
you were asking about that.
Oh my God. Well, now I'm like, well, we should actually be looking at February 6th because this is when the first live call is happening.
Oh, okay. And
Okay,
where is
if
the
I'm
first
doing a
moon?
thing, this would be an inception thing. Like I already announced it. This is a thing in this example that is
Yeah.
actually happening in my business. I'm doing because we're launching Regenerative Copywriting Studio and we're doing four live calls. That's like a part of this launch period. And the
Mhm.
first live call, 9 a.m. Hawaii time, there we go, down here on February 6th. So the moon is in Gemini and
Mhm.
I'm trying to learn from you here. The moon is
So
square Neptune. So this is a bad thing.
it's potentially it's a difficulty with the outcome. I wouldn't have chosen this particularly, but it's not necessarily like the worst possible thing. Neptune, so there could be some confusion, there could be some sort of
Oh my God, am I about to change the live call dates? Maybe
if you do change it to the 5th,
okay,
but
okay, we're doing that. We're gonna just change it to the 5th.
this
Okay, 'cause
isn't so
let's see, that's moon is in Tor wait, moon is in
Moon is
Taurus,
in
and then
Taurus.
the moon, I'm seeing this, it's sextile Neptune. So we have the sextile right there. So that's a happy thing. But then if you're
Yeah,
we're just
exactly.
talking about the journey in here because so we're looking at where the moon so the moon squares Pluto, which is a bad thing, and then we have the moon squaring Mercury, which is a bad thing. Then we have the moon squaring the sun, which is I don't know if that's bad or not. Is moon squaring the sun
Yes.
bad? Okay, so it doesn't get the free pass like
First
Venus
quarter
and
square, it's not as bad as some of the other components. That's actually like a point of manifestation where there's like a challenge to create or put something out there. Like it's the first crisis of manifestation, basically.
and
So
then
that's what that represents.
and then
But let's say you're doing it on
sextile.
the 5th, right? You've already passed all of these
Yeah.
squares. And then you're into the little asterisks, the sextiles, and then there is a conjunction to Uranus, but I don't necessarily see that as being a horribly negative thing. There could be something unexpected that comes up, through the workshop or
So I'll
as a
just have to make
result of the
sure I do it
workshop.
after it happens.
And you can do that too. You can, if you're scared of that Uranus, like you can absolutely do that. But, Uranus, it brings things that are unexpected in all directions. Like it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just surprise. And if you're trying to do something that's really revolutionary, really, really radical, really different, something that is like earth-shattering and life-changing for the lives of other people, you might want to harness that Uranus energy. We did that in your electional chart for your book launch, remember? Like
Yeah,
that Uranus was really nicely aspected, and I was like, this is perfect for exactly what your book is about.
yeah. This is fun. I hope this is useful for everyone. This is making a lot of sense to me. I've never heard of this before, the talking about the moon aspects in launching. So okay, to review, very, very generally we can use like waxing moon periods for building, but if we want to get more precise, we are looking at the moon's aspect when it's about to go right before it goes void of course, and we want it to be pleasant
Yes.
essentially. And then if they're before that, this exact thing before that void, of course, all of the other moon aspects are kind of telling us a story. And ideally, we're having our launch thing happen after all of the bad stuff happens.
That's what you try to do, but even if you have to do it and then there's like some squares after, it's not like the worst thing that could possibly happen because you know the outcome is going to be positive. So whatever comes up is going to be surmountable.
Okay, perfect.
And then finally, you would be looking at the sign.
Okay. And when we're ranking, the
Yeah.
most importance is the aspect right before it goes void, of course.
Yes.
Would secondary be the sign of the moon? Like, what is the secondary right after that?
It kind of depends. So I look at the sign of the ascendant at the time of the launching of the thing as being way more important than the sign of the moon. But it's always helpful to have the sign of the moon match the thing that you're launching.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, if you are launching, let's say, a course on massage therapy,
Uh-huh.
Taurus would be, something that's very associated with the body, body work, luxury, like actual physical touch, that sensation. And so putting the moon in Taurus would be helpful for that, right?
Mhm.
Versus putting the moon in like, I don't
Mars.
know, like putting the moon with Mars in Aries and like having a really painful massage, right? So like, yeah. Or that's a more active time, right? It's not necessarily as chill. So yeah, you want it to kind of match the theme of the thing that you're launching. That would be another thing if you're just looking at the moon. But if you were to rank it, like last aspect the moon makes before it moves into the next sign, that is the number one thing. The secondary thing would be like looking at the journey and also not doing it when it's void, of course.
Mhm.
And then from there, you could look at moon sign, moon phase. Those are about equal. Like they're,
But you were saying like if we're not just looking at the moon, we're also trying to think of the ascendant of the chart, and we would just
yes.
we would have to pull up some sort of chart reading something for that,
In
right?
which case, yeah, because the ascendant's going to change like minute to minute, hour to hour. But a big rule for casting a chart for the launch of something, so like a business launch or a course launch, is going to be to match the significations of the sign. So the meanings behind that sign, the symbolism behind that sign, that needs to work well with what it is that you're actually putting out there.
Mhm. So like a fitness guide would be different than your massage course.
Exactly. So, like a fitness guy, you might think Aries, right? Or Virgo. A massage course, you might think Taurus. There's more nuance to it than that. Like, you can use planets to kind of work with the energy too. Like, even if it's not in the sign that you want it to be in, that planet could signify something really important or that matches the thing that you're launching. And you could put that planet with the ascendant. But this is kind of more nuts and bolts of
Yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah.
casting a chart.
So have like beyond, because you mentioned Astro Gold. I'm assuming that's what you personally would use for
Mhm.
but for like us beginner non-astrologer people, is there a chart service? Is that chart reading service? Is that what I would call it? I don't know.
Usually
Yeah,
it's
you
just
recommend
a software, yeah.
software. There you go.
But yeah, I use astro.com. I still use that
Okay.
alongside my
Uh-huh.
paid software. It's free. It's my favorite. That's what I teach for all my students because
Okay.
it's really accessible. They don't have to spend hundreds of extra dollars on software unless they want to. It does almost all the things. It's just you have to do a little bit more to make it do the things, as
Hmm.
opposed to like a paid software is usually a little bit more seamless and integrated.
Okay, Cool. And then were we going to talk about houses?
I think we're going to talk about like not worrying so much about the perfect timing.
Okay.
Like what
Okay.
if things happen and the timing's bad, right?
Mhm. Well, like I'm more thinking because we're recording this at the beginning of 2025. So I assume people are kind of trying to plan out. I mean, first of all, I'm sure you have a YouTube video on like astrology of 2025. So go watch that first. But for people planning these larger times of years that they're looking at is like, okay, well, if I can launch any time in 2025, should it be March or should it be April? How do you think
Okay.
about that?
So that is like where I would start
Uh-huh.
always. So if a client comes to me and has an electional chart, like with you, it was really easy because you were like, it can be whenever. And I was like, okay, great. So I can just do whatever because then I have the whole year and I can narrow down like these are the times when these like really beautiful things are happening. So say that's your situation, you would want to look and see what the outer planets are doing. You would want to consider planetary retrogrades to a certain extent, especially if those planets are closely connected to the thing that you're launching. You would want to look at things like the eclipse season and the eclipses, because eclipses in particular can make things really unpredictable with the outcomes, because the eclipses give you not what you want, but what you need, what your soul needs for its growth and evolution. And 9 times out of 10, that's not what you think you want.
Yeah.
So you don't have control over the outcomes during eclipse season. And usually with electional astrology, what you're trying to control is outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you would kind of go through the year and be like, okay, well, there are these eclipses. You can still do things during eclipse season, but the big rule of thumb is you do not launch on an eclipse. There are
Like
exceptions
the
to every
exact
rule.
moment, right? Like the day of the eclipse we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, and usually like 3 days before and after, especially if it's a stronger eclipse, like a total solar eclipse or a blood moon lunar eclipse, those are going to be more powerful. And chances are, especially if that eclipse is hitting you hard, you want to leave some wiggle room in your schedule anyway, because there are karmic situations and fated events and things that are predestined that you can't account for that are likely to bubble up around that time, like before, during, and after. And so, kind of keeping that space, I think, is important energetically, even if the thing doesn't manifest on the eclipse, which it usually doesn't.
Hmm.
You want to have more wiggle room during eclipse season if you can.
Hmm. And then are we looking at like all planetary retrogrades? Are there certain planets that you pay attention to more than or less?
Definitely, I pay attention to the inner planets more because the outer planets are retrograde like most of the year.
Hmm.
So that's not going to be as big of a thing. But the inner planets do tend to have a bigger impact on the way that things pan out and outcomes and having maybe unexpected hurdles or reversals and things like that. So you do want to look at that. Like, for example, for Mercury, everyone's always like, oh, I can't do anything during the Mercury retrograde. That's almost never the case. With Mercury in retrograde, you can still move forward things, you can launch things, but you have to know that like the terms or the agreement, like especially if you're entering into some sort of like agreement or contract, or there was a communication that was really important that needed to happen during that time, like an important meeting, the terms that are laid out, the plans are going to shift after Mercury goes direct almost every single time. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It just means that you need to be prepared that this is what you laid out, but it's going to change when Mercury goes direct. And I've seen plenty of people like launch things during a Mercury retrograde and it turns out fine. They
Hmm.
just have a little bit of cleaning up to do after that retrograde period is done. Um, so Mercury's a big one, but not like
Not
something where
that
it's dead in the
important. Yeah.
water.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I would say if you were launching something that's mercurial, like very mercurial, you might want to consider it more. Like I wouldn't maybe like launch a podcast because that's very Mercury, launch your book, like that type of thing, unless you are natally a Mercury retrograde. So if you're born under Mercury retrograde, which you are, these are actually better times for you to move forward with things where you have this natural ability to work with the retrograde energy because it is who you are. It's part of who you are.
Hmm.
So my
And if you're
example, I
curious
like,
about that, you can Google it, you guys.
yeah, just Google
Yeah.
like the day you were born and see if
Yeah.
Mercury was in retrograde. It's 3 times a year. A lot of people are born under a Mercury retrograde, and you guys don't work the same.
Yeah. I just go through life assuming that everything will change. So I think that's probably Mercury retrograde birth chart stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So plans are not static. Like they're flexible.
And then is it simplifying too much to be like, oh, it's like great to launch during cancer season, or that's probably too simplistic, right?
Yeah, because I don't know why I don't know why it would be great to launch during cancer
Or
season.
yeah, I literally threw out a sign. During Sagittarius, like
Yeah, I mean, there's no particular sun sign that's better for launching. I mean, you could do the same thing with the moon and like align the energy of the sun sign with the energy behind the thing that you're doing. So, Sagittarius season would be a good time to go back to school or launch like, some sort of educational program that's like bigger though, like a bigger, broader scale type of thing. It's a good time for like travel and things like that. So, planning travel. So, those types of things could be true, but like there's so much else going on in the astrology that is just such a small portion
Mhm,
of the whole picture.
mhm. Okay, so circling back to electional charts versus inception charts, can
Mhm.
we, I feel like the word inception is really messing with my head of like what are we actually talking about here? So can we just like drill in a little bit?
So, an inception chart is basically a chart for the onset of something, the initiation of something. So, you can look at the inception chart for your relationship with your husband. So, the first time you met would be the inception chart for that. You could look at an inception chart for like basically anything. Like if you purchased a home but you didn't actually do it electionally, then you could look at that as being an inception chart. It's
Mhm.
really the start of something that you didn't specifically choose intentionally or that just sort of happened to you, especially the things that just
So
happen
all of
to you
our
by
natal
chance.
charts are inception charts.
They are like our natal charts are inception charts. They're the inception of us.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so there's so many different inception charts. So basically, if something has happened, an event has started in your life, and you want to understand like the nature of that event, how it's going to unfold, the potential outcomes, and how it impacts you, you would look at the birth chart of that event if you have the exact time for it, which not everybody does, right? You can look more generally like it was this day and still get some good information, but it's best when you're like, this happened right at this time and you make note of it and you're like, I'm going to look at that later. I'm going to have my astrologer look at that later.
Or it could be in the future, kind of like with my workshop tomorrow, where I was not intentional with the time. I just picked a random date and time.
Yeah,
And so that would be an inception. So, but I can kind of glean information of how things will go based on what was already chosen.
absolutely. Yeah. And so that's one thing. The other thing is like, you really don't have to, with electional astrology, with choosing timing for initiating things, some people go overboard with this. Like, you can't specifically pick timing for every single thing, and you shouldn't. Like, you don't need to time, like, I'm going to have breakfast at this time because the moon is, in the sign of Virgo and it's trining this. Like, that's insane. I'm going to send this letter at this time. I'm going to do every single thing timed by the astrology. Because some people will do that and they'll go too far with it. And that's not necessarily helpful. And you just can't do it. You have to kind of let life do its thing. Electional astrology is only for the really, really important stuff. So
Mhm.
if it's like a big monumental event in like the story of your life, then that's what you're going to use electional astrology for, like a wedding or a course launch or a business launch.
Mhm. So now I'm like, does it matter if for like deciding on dates for like a webinar and stuff? I guess if it's for like a big thing, it matters. But if it's just
Yeah.
kind of like you're doing it every month, it matters a little less.
I think with like a webinar or something, you can definitely use electional astrology for that. But for the smaller things, you kind of just like let it happen. And even if things are happening and the timing isn't the best, it doesn't mean it's not going to work out. That sometimes things are just meant to happen when they're meant to happen.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just have to do things, like even when the timing's not so good, because it just needs to happen. And so that's when you just trust that the astrology is what it is because it needs to be that way. And everything's going to work out because this is what's happening. Like it's the right thing and it's the right time because this is when it's happening.
Mhm.
Like there's a component of that too, where you can't always control every single astrological alignment and every single time that you're doing something. And I'll also get people when there's like bad astrology that'll come to me and be like, oh my God, like I have a surgery scheduled and I need to have this surgery. Like, should I cancel my surgery? Oh my God, no, no. Like, if you are having some sort of health issue that needs to be addressed immediately, or like you have an emergency situation, do not wait until like the perfect alignment with Mars or something like that to like the surgery needs to happen. And this is when it was meant to happen. Like, just trust that it's going to be okay. And usually it will be.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's great. That's, that's great. And it sounds like from what we talked about today, that one little piece of the lunar aspect right before it changes signs, right before it goes void of course, that's like it opens up a gazillion different options
Mhm.
throughout, like what, 15 different options throughout the month of like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this better? Is this worse? So it actually seems like that kind of answers the question of like, but what if it is like, what if the all the astrologers say that like all the astrology is bad right now? You can still make things quote unquote better by looking at these lunar aspects.
Absolutely. We just do the best we can with the energy that we have available to us at that time. And so there are ways to align things, starting with the moon. Like if you know that like right now Mars is in retrograde and maybe you are an Aries or a Scorpio, sun or rising, so you are very ruled by Mars. This might be a more challenging time to get things off the ground, but you can use that information I just gave you about the moon to give you a leg up to make things a little bit easier. And when you actually cast a chart for these things, you can very precisely mitigate the negative influences. So it's not that the challenges won't happen.
Mhm.
They are likely to still come up if things are really wonky and it's hitting you really crazy. But what you can do is provide outlets for opportunity, outlets for solutions that wouldn't otherwise be available by choosing that precise timing.
Mhm. Oh, so good. So this was amazing, Heather. I'm really excited about this. This feels really, really tangible and doable. Everyone definitely watch the video version of this. Because I think at least it makes more sense to me to like see it on a calendar and see the little symbols and how that works. So you have hundreds of videos on YouTube. Do you have any specific ones you would point people to if they want to know more about what we talked about today?
So I have a very specific one about planning by the moon.
Mm.
It's literally just called Planning by the Moon, so you can search that. And I have another one that's about electional astrology. And if you guys want to go even deeper, I have a mini course on electional astrology as well. So you can kind of find that on my website. But yeah, there's a lot of different resources, and I have a few of them for you.
Hmm. Okay, so for people who want to like take that would be like simple, small next steps with you, that mini course, the YouTube videos, and then you have the, do you want to talk at all about the Cosmic Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if anyone out there actually wants to learn astrology and wants to figure out how to not just understand like the signs, the planets, the houses, the aspects really deep, but how to weave it all together into a story that is meaningful, that is helpful, that is life-changing for you, your friends, your family, your clients, even. If you want to integrate astrology into the work that you're doing as a coach or creator, or whatever beautiful things you're putting out into the world, you can absolutely do that. And the Cosmic Academy of Astrology is my course that will help you. This also covers more advanced types of astrology techniques. It builds, up to those, including predictive techniques using things like transits, which is where the planets are in the sky right now, and how that compares to your natal placements, your birth chart. We go into things that are a little bit more advanced, like solar returns, lunar returns, annual perfections, secondary progressions. I even have a whole level that's about, honing in on your astrological consultation skills, your reading skills, and building your astrology business. So you can find that at astrologywithheather.com.
Mhm. So cool. And Heather has a really, really successful astrology business. I know that there's plenty of people who listen to this podcast who are astrologers or who are super into astrology. So she's an amazing example and has trained a lot of people to build very successful astrology businesses. So like if that's you, definitely go subscribe to her YouTube. You probably already are subscribed to her YouTube, but the Cosmic Academy is a really great place to not only become a spectacular astrologer, but learn how she's like was fully booked as an astrologer and then built up a much larger scaled astrology business. So just to toot your horn even more.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm still trying to convince you to do a business astrology for business course on like designing your business based on your birth chart because the insights you gave me were just like so amazing. And I've gotten a lot of astrology readings. So I'm like I'm really hoping maybe it'll be a 2026 thing that you put out this course.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to do that. Hopefully it'll be sooner than that.
Okay. Do you have any final messages for us?
I guess my main message is to, like I said before, start playing with this. Like choose a month. That month could start right now, or if we're doing this in February, if this is releasing in February, there's a new moon on February 27th. You could align it with the lunar cycle and just start playing with this for an entire month and just compare how things have progressed and how things have gone one month to the other, like with all of the important things that you've been scheduling and launching and doing, because that's going to be the real test. Like astrology is only 50% book learning. It's only 50% me telling you information and you absorbing it. The rest is experiential. And that's where you're going to get the direct information about how this works for you, how this applies to your business and your own life is by actively doing it. So I highly recommend taking this and just playing with it, maybe even journaling about your outcomes throughout the month and just seeing how it works for you. Don't take my word for it, just do it yourself.
Take your own word for it.
Yeah.
Good.